So you want to own a private prison. On paper, it is the closest thing American capitalism has ever produced to a perfect business. The government hand delivers your customers in shackles. Your customers cannot leave. They cannot switch to a competitor. They cannot leave a one-star review. And in many contracts, the state signs a written promise to keep your building at least 90% full or pay you as if it were. Guaranteed demand, captive clientele, taxpayer-backed revenue. And yet, the largest private prison company in America once watched its stock fall from $45 a share to under 19 cents. Not because crime disappeared, not because the customers stopped coming, because the owners made one financial decision so catastrophic it nearly vaporized the entire company. To understand how a business with government-guaranteed customers can still destroy its owners, you have to understand what a prison actually sells. It is not security. It is not rehabilitation. It is nights. The entry ladder here does not start with razor wire. It starts with a house. At the bottom of the industry sits community corrections, halfway houses and residential reentry centers that contract with state agencies or the Federal Bureau of Prisons. A licensed 40-bed facility in a mid-sized city can be assembled for $1 to $3 million, most of it real estate and compliance retrofits, and it bills the government per resident per night, just like its razor wire cousins. One rung up sits the Regional Detention Center, county-level lockups, immigration detention, 500 to 1,000 beds. Construction runs roughly $80,000 to $100,000 per bed, which puts a single mid-market facility at $50 to $100 million before the first contract is signed. You are no longer an entrepreneur at this level. You are a municipal infrastructure project with a general counsel. And at the top of the ladder, the air gets institutional. CoreCivic and Geo Group each control tens of thousands of beds across dozens of facilities, carry multi-billion-dollar enterprise values, and operate as publicly traded companies whose real product is not incarceration. It is a long-term government lease with a human being inside it.
Which brings us to the building itself. A modern private prison is not designed around the inmate, it is designed around the payroll. The signature layout is the podular design, cells arranged in a wide triangle or wedge around a single open day room with one elevated control station at the center. The geometry is the business plan. Perfect sight lines mean one officer can supervise 64 people. No blind corners means fewer cameras, fewer patrols, fewer salaries. Poured concrete furniture never breaks and never gets replaced. Stainless steel fixtures survive decades of abuse. Every material choice is a depreciation schedule wearing a disguise. Even the revenue hides in the walls. Commissary snacks marked up like airport retail, phone calls that for years cost families up to $1 a minute, video visitation sold as a convenience and priced as a monopoly. But the same architecture that minimizes staff conceals the industry's great invisible liability, thinness. A building engineered to run on minimum headcount has no slack. One understaffed shift, one hiring shortfall in a rural county, one bad night in the day room, and the calculated geometry stops being efficient and starts being dangerous. The margin and the risk are the same number. Strip away the guard towers and a private prison is a hotel with one guest. The guest is the government. The government books the rooms, sets the length of stay, and pays the bill. Everything in this industry runs on a single unit of account, the man day. One person held for one night. The state pays the operator a per diem, a fixed daily rate per man day, typically somewhere between $50 and $90 depending on the security level and the state. That is the entire revenue engine, beds times nights times rate. Which is why the industry obsesses over one metric above others, compensated occupancy, the percentage of your beds that are actually generating a per diem on any given night. Publicly traded operators report it to Wall Street the way airlines report load factor. And here is where the economics turn genuinely strange. Many contracts contain an occupancy guarantee, a clause obligating the state to pay for a minimum percentage of beds, often 90%, whether those beds are full or not. Read that again. An empty bed can produce revenue. A cell with nobody in it can bill the taxpayer every single night. It is one of the only businesses on earth where vacancy is a billable fent. But the guarantee cuts both ways. Because the per diem is fixed, the operator cannot raise prices, ever. The only lever left is cost. Every dollar of profit in this industry is extracted by subtraction, by running the same man day cheaper than the state can. And since 60 to 70% of a prison's operating cost is labor, the entire business model compresses into one uncomfortable sentence. Pay fewer guards less money than the government pays its own.
Now watch the perfect business fail, twice. In 1999, Corrections Corporation of America, the founding giant of the industry, decided operating prisons was not enough. It restructured into a real estate investment trust called Prison Realty and went on a debt-fueled building spree, constructing thousands of speculative beds with no contracts attached, on the theory that incarceration only goes up. The theory met a nasty surprise. Prison populations plateaued, the spec beds sat empty, and empty beds without an occupancy guarantee are just concrete. Buried under roughly $1 billion of debt and REIT rules that forced it to pay out cash it desperately needed, the company watched its stock collapse from the mid-40s to below 19 cents. It survived only through a humiliating recapitalization that wiped out shareholders and unwound the whole structure. The customers never stopped coming. The balance sheet died anyway. The second corpse belongs to Willacy County, Texas. In 2006, the county issued tens of millions in revenue bonds to build a 2,000-bed immigration detention camp, 10 giant Kevlar domes, locals nicknamed Ritmo, operated privately and fed by federal contracts. The county bet its finances on one customer with one need. Then, in February 2015, inmates protesting medical care set fires and tore the facility apart. It was declared uninhabitable. The federal government canceled the contract within weeks. 400 jobs evaporated, the bonds went into default, and a compound that cost tens of millions to build eventually sold at auction for pennies on the dollar. One riot, one canceled contract, one county holding the wreckage. Over-leverage killed the first. A single fragile customer killed the second. The industry calls this a stable business. So here is the machine reduced to a single line. Profit equals per diem minus daily cost multiplied by beds multiplied by compensated occupancy. That is it. That is the whole empire. Run well at scale with disciplined debt and diversified contracts, the model produces net margins in the neighborhood of 10%. Solid, unspectacular, utterly dependent on a customer who is also your regulator, your inspector, and your only source of revenue. The master of this game is George Zoley, who built Geo Group from a single Florida contract in the 1980s into a global detention conglomerate spanning 3 continents, by understanding that the asset was never the building, it was the signature on the contract. And that is the final uncomfortable truth of this industry. The system pays the operator whether the beds are full or empty. It pays the bondholder before it pays the guards. It pays the phone vendor, the commissary supplier, and the construction firm. The one party in the entire equation who generates all the revenue and captures none of it is the person in the cell. In every other business, the customer is king. In this one, the customer is the inventory.